What is API testing? Guys, let's understand API in layman language first. API stands for Application Programming Interface, and it is essentially a messenger that takes requests, translates, and returns responses. When you sit down to order at a restaurant, the waiter takes your order, relays it to the kitchen, and returns with your food. In this scenario, waiter is acting as an API or intermediary. So what is it? API is actually application programming interface, which acts as a messenger between two softwares. So let's say one software want to interact with other software, then API is a messenger which is going to act as an intermediate between them. Let's say software which is requesting, that means software which is asking for something is called requesting or client software. Client software will give the request, API will take the request and give that request to the server or the person who going to respond back to the request. So after that, this response is also carried by the API and given back to the client machine. So this is how API works. In simple words, API is like this waiter, if you can see over here. This waiter will go to the client, take the request, write it down in his handwritten notes. He will go back to the kitchen and tell them, you know what, we got an order. This is the order. And then he will take this order and give it to client. So client has requested, API or waiter took the request, conveyed it to the kitchen, or you can say server. Now kitchen, after making the dish you ordered, kitchen will give it back to the waiter and waiter will supply it back to the customer. So this waiter intermediate between you and kitchen is called API in a layman language. We will understand this with the help of technical concepts now. So API in technical terms. API stands for Application Programming Interface. It allows two applications to communicate with one another to access data. So guys, if you look at any application, your application is divided into three sections. One is called presentation layer, second is called business layer, and last is called database layer. This is called three-tier architecture of your application. So if you look at any application, actually application consists of three parts: presentation layer, business layer, database layer. We'll understand this in more detail now. Here, so presentation layer is user interface. Guys, front end which you can see is presentation layer. And the back end which you have is called data storage. But in between you have business logic. What is business logic? So let's say I want to book in flight now. So I will log in into one application. I want to book a ticket. I open one flight application. Now that flight application has its own database also. And that flight application is interacting to other applications too. Let's say I'm saying, okay, I want to travel today and my destination is India. So what will happen? I will enter at user interface that all of my criterias or my requirements, I'm going to enter at user interface. This user interface will go to the business logic and will talk to all the flights, British Airways, Air India, KLM. So they will be talking to everyone. Now, this interaction of user interface with different business logic or different components is done through different APIs. Application programming interface, that means you are communicating to other applications. One software is communicating to other softwares to get their information. If you want to register in that application, it will be directly sent to the database of that application. But if you are searching for something which you want to pick from some other applications, like British Airways will be sending their flight information over here. Air Canada will be sending their flight information over here. KLM will be sending. So this is not this application's information. This application is actually communicating to other softwares. And how it's going to communicate? So you can consider this interface as client, and this is waiter. Waiter is talking to other databases or your own database. I'm requesting for something, waiter is going and picking up the things and giving you back. So this is API. So API works at this level. So let's read it in more detail. Core functionality of the system is contained within the business logic. They are responsible for taking information from various user interface. So from this interface, they will take the information and now performing calculations, transactions on the database layer, and then presenting it back to the user interface. So if I talk about the direct communication, whatever you do through user interface will give that information to business logic. If any calculation, any transactions are required, this will calculate and do it on the database. This is a direct communication. But in addition to communicating with human beings by UI layer, computer system have to be able to communicate directly with each other also. For example, your mobile ride sharing application, for example, Uber, will need to communicate with mapping services, the traffic, weather services, and other specialized applications used by the drivers providing the rides. In the modern interconnected world, we take for granted that all these different systems can speak to each other seamlessly. In reality, that would not be possible without APIs. So let's take an example of Uber. So let's say I did Uber. I can share my location with my friend. How it's happening? So system Uber's application is actually communicating with other application, that is Google Maps. Interfaces of Uber, but that interface is talking to Google Maps. That means I am going through this interface, but when it went to the business logic, it went to the other components. Google Maps, how weather is, traffic is. So all these things are there in the business component. And then Uber has its own database too. So here this component can communicate with different softwares as well as it can communicate to its database also. So when you're communicating to its database, it's normal database testing. But when this is communicating with other softwares like Google Maps, weather application, then it is through APIs, application programming interface. So this is the structure of any of the application, and this layer over here nowadays is very important because now you are not communicating within the application. Nowadays your application is communicating with different applications. Common examples are flight reservation application. Common example is hotel booking. If you see Trivago, you don't get that hotels like Trivago's own hotels. You're getting hotels of different companies. Marriott hotels, other hotels are there. Holidays Inn have their own database. But when from this intermediate application, I'm asking, okay, what are the different hotels available? This intermediate application is actually going to Holiday Inns, taking their data and showing it to me. So who is going and picking the data? APIs. So APIs are there to pick the data, to present it to the user interface or the UI layer, you can say, or the presentation layer. So this is how actually API works. There were two protocols in which these APIs were written or developed. One is called SOAP and another is REST API. SOAP is not being used nowadays, but guys, because it's very slow for the communication. And in REST APIs, like in API communication, we need communication to be very fast. Within the milliseconds, it should happen. But SOAP is very slow in the communication as compared to REST API. So that's why now companies are using just REST API. It was very long ago SOAP was being used, but nowadays they are using REST API. REST API is a protocol that we are using for the APIs. Now, if I talk about the language in which APIs can be written, so the language can be JSON or XML is a language in which APIs are written. REST API is a protocol for the APIs. Languages in which the protocols are written are JSON and XML language. Let's understand why API testing is required. So why API testing? Guys, there are chances the developer can create APIs with bugs and is not responding the way it should be. Let's say API is created, but now API is not giving us the information expected. Who gonna check that? It's a job of tester, API tester, to check whether API is giving the information as expected or not. For example, let's say API was supposed to give me the flight information, but instead of flight information, API gave me some other information. Or API has not tested the criteria which I put over there. I was asking for 2 passengers, but it gave me information for 4 passengers. So that means there is a bug in the API. API is not hitting the right part. API is not giving me the same information as I'm expecting. So as a tester, my job is to check whether API is giving me the same information as expected or not. Many APIs are interlinked and must be tested. Guys, there might be a chance that one API is hitting to other API and that other API is actually hitting to the database of application. So interlinked APIs can be there. So that's why testing is very much important, because let's say if one API changes, it will affect the other API. So APIs are connected to each other, and this is how it's very important for you as a tester to test it. Validation is must in the live environment. So let's say now we are in the live environment, and in live environment, guys, sometimes it happens that the company who gave you API or developers who made the APIs, they make some small changes, and in live environment your API stop giving you the response which you expect. So live environment validations keeps on happening on the regular basis, and for that API testing is must. Now this is very important. You might have seen http colon www.google.com. What is this http? Why always http is written over there? You copy any URL, it will be copied with https or http. HTTPS stands for, guys, secure. If the website is secure, you will see S. If S is not written, that means it is not secure. So HTTP actually stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. It is an application protocol used for web. So any website, if you want to open any website, you will be opening with this protocol. So that's why HTTP, writing HTTP is must. In this, HTTP client will send request to server and server will respond back to you. HTTP, your endpoint URL. Guys, endpoint URL is a URL of a server. And then you see some information over here. Port number, resource path, query parameter. Query parameter, if you have any question. Let's say here I want to search something. So I will type, let's say software testing. Now, when I click on this enter, it will go to the backend and try to give me all the information about software testing. So this is https google.com. This is my base URL, or you can say this is my endpoint URL of a server. Then this is my resource. This is my page on which I'm checking it. It's a search page. Question mark, query parameter, and this is my query. So it searched like this. See, it is Chrome. All the information is there. So this is how actually HTTP protocol works. So guys, your job is to check whether APIs are giving the information expected or not. You are not fixing it. You are just reporting it to the developers if they are not giving you the information required. But how you going to check whether the information is coming in the same way as it is expected or not? You will be doing it in the form of response codes. HTTP response codes. So your job is to check whether the code is coming as expected or not. So there are some codes in the backend. These are the codes. HTTP codes. This is HTTP's protocol codes. If you open any website, let's say if API is hitting the server, so that means if API is working as expected, your response code should be 200. It should be in 200s. If you get response code in 400s, that means it is client side errors. Guys, this is very common error you see on the internet. 404 page not found. So when the code is in 400s, it is from client side. That means resource not found. That page is not there on the client side, or client side issues is there. When it is in 500s, it is server side issues. Internal error or any bug is there, server overloaded. So we will be understanding the response codes. Mostly these are the codes which are used. 200s, that means successful. Your API is giving you the information as expected. 400s, client fault or page is not there, client side data is not there. 500s is mostly server side issues. So how we as a tester gonna decode it? We should understand that what is the meaning of the response code. You will be cross checking whether that response code is coming or not. In case we don't have UI, we need API client to test this. Why we use APIs, guys? Let's say eliminate the user interface. Let's say we don't have user interface. I'm talking about, let's say, flight reservation application. You don't have user interface. Now you have to directly talk to the APIs. Earlier, you used to have user interface. You put your request, click on search. APIs in the background used to go to the database related to it, give you the information. Now I don't have user interface. Now how I'm going to check whether API is working in the same ways as expected or not. I will be doing it with the help of some tools. It can be Postman, SOAP UI, advanced REST clients, but we mostly use Postman. Now we will start with the installation of Postman. So guys, Postman is open source tool. That means you need not to pay for it. It's not licensed product. You will be simply writing download Postman. Here we will be clicking on this thing over here, first link. Download the app. Click on Windows 64-bit, whatever the bit size of your Windows. Click on that. Or you can use this on web also, guys. If for this, you can create a free account and accordingly you can access it. So both of the options are okay. So I'm gonna open it. So yeah, so this is how it looks like. And if you don't have user interface and you want to check whether your APIs are actually working as expected or not, you can use Postman tool, and this is how it looks like. Okay, so guys, whenever you're using REST API has 4 operations. One is called post, get, put, delete. So when you are testing any API, you will be using these 4 methods, which is post, get, put, delete. Post is to create data. In simple words, is to insert data. Retrieve is to fetch data. Put is to update data. So put is a combination of create and update, because update means you're creating a new entity and updating it with the old entity. Delete is to remove data. Commonly, these are the 4 operations that API performs. That is to create any data, retrieve information from the database, update the information, and delete the information, which is also known as post to create, get to fetch, put to update, delete to remove. So this is the terminology we're going to use in REST API: post, get, put, delete. Now, how they work, we're going to understand that in more detail now. Let's say I'm working on an application, and this is an application of real estate. That means if any house is there which is for sale, I can see in this application. If I want to sell my house, I can give it to real estate agent and he can put it in this application. And so this is the application in which whole information is there. So let's say my first thing is I now want to sell the house, and for that I will be giving the information to real estate agent. So let's say this is the application in which type of house, that is whether it's a semi-detached, detached, condo, or it's a townhouse. So type of house. Second is location or address. Next is budget. And last is insert. Let's say I want to sell my house, so I will go to real estate agent. I'll say, you know what, I want to sell house, and he will say, okay, give me some information. I'll put it on the portal. Okay, I will put it on MLS, that is listing. I will put it over there, and you can give this information to me. So we will be giving information. Okay, this is, let's say, semi detached, location is this, budget I want this. He will say okay, he will write it down and click on insert. When he will click on the insert, information will get stored in the database, which is there on the server. Let's say I'm a real estate agent, I'm inserting it from my machine, but this information will get updated on the server. So at the back end, APIs will pick information and save it on the server. Which type of API, which method actually triggered at the back end for the API? So this is post. Post is to create data, to insert data in the backend. So post methods, if you're testing any API whose job is to create data in the database, that you will be testing with the post method. So post method, so this is at the backend. post is being clicked, this information will be inserted in the backend. So post. So this is called post method. Now I want to now search for some houses. I went to the real estate agent in the same application. I asked him, you know what? Now what I want, my budget is this, and this is the information I have. I want to search houses according to my criteria. So he will say, okay, give me some information. Which type of house? Again, the same information. Which type of house you're looking for? So let's say type of house. Which type of house you're looking for? What is the location? So here, let's say location. What is your budget? So let's say budget. Now here there will be a button called search. Search instead of insert. Now it is search. So when he will click on search, which API will be hit or which method we are using? Get. Post is to create entity in the database. Get is to fetch information, search information from the database. So this is the comparison between post and get. Now let's say I told that, instead of this search, so I don't want the search. So I'm just gonna, let's say instead of the search, I don't want search. Instead of search, I changed my mind when I was selling my house. I changed my mind. I said, you know what? Change the budget. I want to increase the budget now. It was, let's say, $7 lakh earlier. Now I want to make it 8 lakh. I want to change the budget. So all these entities will be same. Here the budget will be edited. So let's say now the button over here is edit. So at the back end, which call will be there? So edit is put call. So this is how in the backend we will be testing this particular criteria with the help of put call. If you want to edit any information, edit any API, we will be testing our edit API with the help of put call. Now let's say house is sold, everything is done. I want to delete now this information. House is sold, so I don't want this information to be there in the portal. So I went to the real estate agent. I said, now the house is sold. Delete that information from the portal. Or a real estate broker will be automatically, he will be going and deleting this information because the house is sold. So he will clicking on the button at the end called delete. And delete is delete call in the API language. So delete method. So these are 4 methods: put, post, get, delete. These are the 4 commonly used methods which we're going to use in APIs. So for that, how are you going to test these methods? You need APIs for that. So when I said insert, in the back end, that API is hit, went to the database, picked all the information from here and inserted it in the database. So if, let's say, guys, try to understand why APIs are working at the back end, because you are doing it on your machine and the actual server is somewhere else. It's not your application. But let's say if I'm doing it on my own personal application, then it will go to my local database. Then APIs are not required. But right now, because this is client and the information will go to server over the internet, 2 systems are interacting. And when 2 systems are interacting at the backend, there is API which will be working. But if it is your local system, then it is your local database in which information will be stored. Then you don't need any API because it's not 2 systems interacting. But here client and server is interacting. That's why at the backend, when you click on insert, behind this button, API is coded. And when you click on insert, that API will go to the database, server's database, and will create this entity. Now, whether it is creating that entity or not, this post API is working accordingly or not, that is what we are testing. We will test the API behind it is actually creating entity at the backend or not. The API behind search is actually searching the relevant information or not. So the get call is actually giving me the information I expected or I asked for or not. Delete is actually deleting that information or not. And put is actually updating the required information or not. So these are the 4 methods we use in API testing.